The observation deck on the diplomatic station above Earth was the largest room Jiwoo had ever seen. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy stood or floated or hung from the ceiling, all watching the massive screens that showed the Devourer fleet in orbit around Harmony. 3 days had passed since the fleet arrived. 3 days of the galaxy holding its breath, waiting for the destruction to begin. Instead, they watched Devourer ships helping human colonists build new settlements. "This is impossible," muttered Counselor Vextar for the 100th time. His forearms were crossed tightly across his chest. "Devourers don't help. They consume. It's what they are." "Apparently not anymore," Ambassador Taemin said cheerfully as he entered the observation deck. Behind him walked a figure that made every alien in the room step backward. It was clearly a devourer, but unlike any they had seen before. Where the creatures in the fleet were twisted and organic, this one moved with grace and purpose. Its form had stabilized into something almost elegant, and when it spoke, its voice was like music. "I am the one you called the Queen Mind," it said. "Though I prefer my new name, Teacher of Gardens." The silence in the room was complete. Even the floating ethereals seemed to have stopped breathing. "You requested communication," Teacher of Gardens continued. "I have come to explain what has happened to my people." Taemin gestured to a specially prepared seating area. "Please make yourself comfortable. We have much to discuss." As they settled in, Jiwoo noticed something strange. All around the room, the alien representatives looked terrified, but not of the Devourer. They were looking at Taemin with the same fear they had shown at the council meeting. "Before we begin," Taemin said, "I should mention that we've invited some observers to this meeting." The air above the diplomatic table shimmered, and suddenly 3 holographic figures appeared. Jiwoo recognized Dr. Miran Cho from her research files, but the other 2 were new to her. Dr. Cho, representing the Silent Guardian Project, Taemin introduced them. Commander Jin Ho, who led humanity during the Forgotten War, and President Yoon, current head of the Earth Colonial Authority. Jin Ho looked exactly as he had in the 500-year-old recordings, calm, pleasant, and somehow terrifying. President Yoon was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes that held depths of steel. "Now then," Taemin said, settling back in his chair, "I think it's time for some honesty." Counselor Vextar found his voice first. "What did you do to them?" "The Devourers should have consumed everything in that system. We helped them become what they were always meant to be," Dr. Cho answered. "The Silent Guardian Network identified them as a threat and performed a correction." "Correction?" Mindspeaker Veltron floated closer, his ethereal form glowing with agitation. "You mean you changed them? Rewrote their very nature? Is that what you did to us?" Kortzara's crystal body flickered nervously. 500 years ago during the Forgotten War? Did you rewrite us too?" Commander Jin Ho smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. "Only the parts of you that were dangerous. The aggression, the need to conquer, the belief that might makes right. We left everything else alone, that you had no right," Vextar roared, jumping to his feet, "didn't we?" President Yoon's voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. "You came to our worlds with weapons. You planned to exterminate our entire species. What right did you have to do that?" The Valorian leader opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. "The truth is," Taemin said, "we could have destroyed you all. The technology exists. Silent Guardian has the capability to end any civilization in the galaxy within hours. But we chose not to. Instead," Dr. Cho continued, "we chose to help you become better, more peaceful, more cooperative. The Valorians became protectors instead of conquerors. The Ethereals used their mental powers to heal instead of dominate. The Christek Collective learned to create beauty instead of weapons." Jiwoo stared at the holographic figures. "You've been controlling the entire galaxy for 500 years? "Not controlling," President Yoon corrected. "Guiding. There's a difference. We don't make your choices for you. We just make it impossible for you to choose destruction over creation." Teacher of Gardens spoke up, its musical voice filled with wonder. "When my fleet arrived in human space, we intended to consume everything. But as we approached, we began to change. The hunger that had driven us for millions of years simply faded. In its place came curiosity, creativity, the desire to nurture instead of destroy." "How?" Veltron asked desperately. "How is such a thing possible?" "Quantum consciousness manipulation," Dr. Cho said simply. "We learned how to identify the neural patterns that create hostile intentions and replace them with cooperative ones. The process is completely painless and leaves the subject's core personality intact. Show them the current map, Commander Jinho suggested, the air above the table filled with a holographic representation of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked monitoring stations, sensor networks, and what the files had called reality anchor points. Every star system, every trade route, every major population center, Taemin explained. Silent Guardian watches everything. Any species that develops aggressive tendencies toward others gets gently corrected. That's why we've had 500 years of relative peace, President Yoon added. Not because you all suddenly became enlightened, but because we made war literally unthinkable for anyone in our sphere of influence. Counselor Vextar sank heavily into his chair. We're puppets, dancing to strings we can't even see. You're free, Jinho corrected firmly. Free to explore, to grow, to create, to build amazing civilizations. The only thing you're not free to do is hurt each other. Is that really so terrible? Around the room, alien representatives struggled with this revelation. Some looked angry, others confused, a few seemed almost relieved. What about species outside your influence? Asked a small, furry delegate that Jiwoo didn't recognize. They usually correct themselves after a few generations of contact with corrected species, Dr. Cho said. Peaceful behavior is contagious, it turns out. Teacher of Garden stood gracefully. I came here expecting to demand explanations, to protest what had been done to my people. But I find I cannot. We are happier now. More complete. For the first time in our existence, we create instead of destroying. And that's the beautiful truth, Taemin said, looking around the room. Every species we've corrected reports the same thing. They're more satisfied with their lives. They find meaning in building rather than tearing down. But the choice was never yours to make. Vextar protested weakly. Wasn't it? President Yoon asked. When you came to exterminate humanity, you made the choice to enter our space with hostile intent. Silent Guardian simply responded to protect us. Everything that followed was consequence, not choice. What happens now? Veltron asked. Do we continue as we have, never knowing when our thoughts might be adjusted? We're offering something better, Taemin announced. Full membership in what we're calling the Protected Alliance. Species that join voluntarily will be given full knowledge of how Silent Guardian works and a say in how it's used. And if we refuse, then you continue as you have. Free to live your lives, just not free to hurt others. Teacher of Gardens turned to address the other alien delegates. I have seen what humanity offers. Not domination, but partnership. Not slavery, but liberation from our own worst impulses. The Devourers formally request membership in this protected alliance, it announced. We offer our fleets not as weapons of consumption, but as tools of creation and growth. One by one, other delegates began to speak up. The Christek Collective, the ethereal mind-touched, even the proud Valorians, all of them requesting membership in humanity's sphere of protection. Jiwoo watched in amazement as the galaxy's greatest powers lined up to place themselves under human guidance, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. There's one more thing, Taemin said as the meeting began to wind down. We're announcing the expansion of the colonial territories. Humanity will begin settling new worlds throughout the galaxy. This caused another stir among the delegates. Don't worry, President Yoon added quickly. We're not displacing anyone. There are millions of empty worlds suitable for terraforming, and we'll be sharing our terraforming technology with any species that wants it. Why? Asked Quartzara. Why share your advantages? Because that's what people do when they're working together instead of fighting, Commander Jinho answered. We're building a galaxy where everyone can thrive. As the delegates began to file out, Jiwoo approached Ambassador Taemin. Sir, I have to ask, are we the good guys in all this? Taemin considered the question seriously. Jiwoo, 500 years ago, the galaxy was full of species that conquered and enslaved each other. Wars that lasted centuries. Entire civilizations wiped out for resources or territory. Today, the worst conflict in known. Space is a trade dispute over spice routes. He gestured to the screens showing devourer ships helping human. Colonists plant gardens. Look at that and tell me we haven't made the galaxy a better place. Jiwoo watched a creature that had once eaten entire worlds carefully, transplanting flowers under the guidance of a human child. Yes, sir, she said quietly. I think we have. Sangwoo checked his cargo manifest one more time as his transport ship approached the Harmony system. 15 tons of farming equipment, 20 cases of medical supplies, and a dozen atmospheric processors. Normal stuff for a colony world, though he had to admit the timing was a bit unusual. "Captain," his co-pilot Junseo called from the front of the ship, "are you seeing this on the sensors?" Sangwoo floated over to look at the display. The screen was covered with red dots, each one representing a massive ship. They were everywhere, filling the space around Harmony like a swarm of angry insects. "Well," Sangwoo said calmly, "that's different." "Different?" Junseo stared at him. "Captain, those are Devourer ships. Hundreds of them. We need to run. Why?" "We have a delivery to make." "Because they'll kill us," Sangwoo shrugged. "Maybe, but the colonists need their farming equipment. Besides, look closer at the sensor readings." Junseo studied the display more carefully. "They're not moving, exactly. Just sitting there, almost like they're waiting for something." As their ship got closer, they could see the Devourer vessels clearly through the viewports. They were unlike anything in human records. Organic-looking things that seemed to be part machine and part living creature. Massive tentacles extended from their hulls, reaching out into space as if trying to grab something that wasn't there. "They're beautiful. In a horrible sort of way," Sangwoo observed. "Captain, I'm detecting smaller ships leaving the main fleet. They're heading for the planet's surface. Scouting parties, probably. Well, let's not keep the colonists waiting." Down on Harmony, 8-year-old Yoonji was playing in her family's garden when the first Devourer scout ship landed in the field next to her house. She looked up from her flowers as strange creatures emerged from the vessel. They were tall and thin, with too many joints in their arms and legs. Their heads were covered in what looked like breathing tubes, and their skin seemed to shift colors as they moved. When they saw Yoonji, they stopped walking and just stared at her. "Hello," Yoonji said politely, the way her mother had taught her to greet visitors. The creatures made sounds like grinding metal. After a moment, one of them approached slowly, moving in a way that seemed confused and uncertain. "Are you lost?" Yoonji asked. The creature tilted its head, making more grinding sounds. Then it did something that would have terrified anyone else in the galaxy. It reached out toward the little girl with one of its twisted hands. Yoonji reached out and took the creature's hand in both of hers. "You're scared," she said with the certainty that only children have. "It's okay. My mom makes really good cookies. Do you want some?" The creature made a different sound, softer and more confused. Its skin stopped shifting colors and settled on a pale blue that somehow looked sad. Across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. Devourer scouts landed near human settlements, emerged from their ships ready to begin the consumption process, and then simply couldn't. Minho was working in his vegetable garden when a group of the creatures surrounded him. He looked up from his tomato plants and nodded pleasantly. "Afternoon," he said. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" The lead creature raised what was clearly a weapon of some kind. But instead of firing, it just held the device and stared at it as if it had forgotten what it was for. "Are you farmers too?" Minho asked, gesturing to his vegetables. "These tomatoes are doing really well this year. The atmospheric processors have the soil chemistry just right." One of the creatures made a sound that might have been a question. "Oh, you want to know how they work?" Minho stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. "Well, it's all about the nitrogen levels. You see, when you're terraforming a world, you have to think about the long-term sustainability." As he talked about soil composition and plant genetics, the Devourer scouts listened with what seemed like genuine interest. Their weapons slowly lowered, forgotten. In orbit, the massive Devourer fleet was experiencing something that had never happened in their millions of years of existence. Confusion, the Queen Mind, the collective consciousness that guided all Devourer actions, tried to process what was happening. The scouts reported back that they had found the humans, located their settlements, identified their technology. But when it came time to begin consumption, the process simply wouldn't start. The consumption protocols were hardwired into every Devourer at the quantum level. They were supposed to be as automatic as breathing. But now, when the Queen Mind tried to activate them, nothing happened. More confusing still, the scouts were sending back reports that made no sense. Images of small humans showing them gardening techniques, records of conversations about weather patterns and agricultural yields, data about something called friendship that the Queen Mind couldn't classify. What is happening? the Queen Mind broadcast to its fleet. The responses were chaos. Ship minds that had operated with perfect unity for eons now reported different experiences, different thoughts. Some wanted to continue the mission. Others were fascinated by human art and music. A few had started composing what they called poetry, though they couldn't explain what that meant. Back on the surface, the encounters continued to grow stranger. Devourer scouts who had landed to consume human settlements instead found themselves helping with construction projects, learning to cook human food and participating in what the humans called games. In the colony's central plaza, a group of children had taught several scouts how to play a simple ball game. The creatures moved awkwardly, their many joints not designed for such activities, but they seemed determined to learn. No, 10-year-old Bomb laughed. You have to catch it, not let it go through your fingers. The scout made its grinding sound, which the children had decided meant laughter, and tried again. Dong-hyun watched from his porch as his granddaughter, Da-un, approached one of the larger scout ships. She carried her engineering toolkit and was talking animatedly with a group of creatures about atmospheric processing. Fascinating, he murmured to himself. Beside him, Kale and Zira sat in stunned silence. The Valorian warrior had been preparing for battle from the moment the first scout ship landed. But there was no battle. There wasn't even conflict. I don't understand, Kale said for the 100th time. They should be consuming everything. That's what devourers do. Maybe they're planning something, Zira suggested, though her psychic senses told her otherwise. Some kind of trick? Look at them, Dong-hyun said, gesturing to where a group of scouts was learning to tend the colony's flower gardens. Do they look like they're planning an attack? In orbit, Sang-woo had finished his delivery and was loading his ship with the colony's monthly supply orders. Several Devourer scouts had asked if they could help, and were now carefully moving boxes with their strange, multi-jointed arms, Captain, Junseo said nervously. Are we really taking shipping advice from monsters that eat planets? They're very polite monsters, Sang-woo pointed out, and they have excellent suggestions about cargo distribution. The Queen Mind made one final attempt to activate the consumption protocols. It sent direct commands to every scout, every ship, every individual devourer in the fleet. Consume, devour, destroy. The response it received was unlike anything, in its vast memory. But they're teaching us about music. The small ones want to show us their art. This friendship concept requires further study. The plants they grow are beautiful. We wish to learn more. For the first time in millions of years, the Queen Mind experienced something that its kind had never known. Doubt. What had these humans done to them? How had they changed the fundamental nature of what it meant to be a devourer? The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep in the devourer fleet's collective memory, a new thought appeared. Not from any individual ship or scout, but from something else entirely. Something that had been watching, analyzing, and carefully adjusting. You came here to destroy, the thought said in a voice like starlight. But destruction is not in your nature anymore. You are gardeners now, builders, teachers. You will help these worlds grow instead of consuming them. The Queen Mind tried to resist, to reassert its original purpose, but the change was already complete. The very concept of consumption had been replaced with something else, something that felt natural and right. On Harmony's surface, Yoonji finished teaching her new friend how to braid flower crowns. The creature's tentacle fingers were clumsy, but it had managed to create something that was almost recognizably a crown. See, she said, placing the flowers on the creature's strange head. Now you're beautiful. The creature made its soft grinding sound and very carefully placed a flower crown on Yoonji's head in return. Above them, the massive devourer fleet began to change course, no longer interested in consumption. They had found something much more interesting than eating worlds. They had found purpose. Hyunwoo had always loved old things. Ancient artifacts, forgotten languages, mysteries buried in time. As humanity's lead archaeologist, he spent most of his days digging through the ruins of dead civilizations. But today, he was digging through humanity's own buried past. The archive chamber beneath Luna Base was a place few humans had ever seen. Hyunwoo needed special permission from 3 different government departments just to stand at the entrance. Beside him, military historian So Young checked her security clearance for the 5th time. Are you sure about this? She whispered. The files we're looking for are classified at the highest levels. The Devourer situation changes everything, Hyun-woo replied. If we're going to understand why the galaxy fears us, we need to know what really happened 500 years ago. The archive door was massive, made of metal that seemed to absorb light. When it finally opened, the air that escaped was cold and tasted of old secrets. Inside, rows of data storage units stretched into the darkness, each one containing terabytes of classified information. Computer, access files related to the Sol incident, authorization code Omega-77, access granted. Warning, these files contain information classified under the Galactic safety protocols. Viewing may cause psychological distress. So Young raised an eyebrow. Psychological distress? What kind of history did we bury down here? The first hologram that appeared showed Earth as it was 500 years ago. But this wasn't the green, peaceful world that humans knew today. The planet looked sick, with brown oceans and gray clouds covering most of the surface. Only small patches of blue and green remained. My God, So Young breathed. What happened to Earth? Population 800 million, the computer announced. Down from 12 billion. Ecosystem collapse in progress. Colonial territories, 3 systems all under siege. Hyun-woo felt his stomach drop. We were dying. The next series of images showed human colonies under attack. Ships he didn't recognize were destroying cities, turning green worlds into burning wastelands. The attackers came from multiple species, Valorians, Ethereals, Christek, and others. The Great Alliance, the computer explained, formed for the specific purpose of eliminating humanity as a threat to galactic stability. Member species 47, combined military strength, 12,000 battle fleets. 12,000 fleets against 3 human systems. So Young stared at the numbers. That's insane. Why did they want to destroy us so badly? More files opened, showing diplomatic records. Hyun-woo read them with growing horror. They called us aggressive primitives, and he said, a dangerous species that would eventually threaten galactic peace. They decided to wipe us out before we became too strong. But we weren't strong, So Young protested. Look at these records. Our technology was centuries behind theirs. Our total fleet was maybe a few hundred ships. They were afraid of our potential, Hyun-woo realized. They looked at human history and saw how quickly we advanced, how we never gave up fighting, and they decided to eliminate us while they still could. The hologram changed, showing the final battle above Earth. Thousands of alien ships surrounded the planet like a metal cloud. Human defenders fought desperately, but they were completely outnumbered. It should have been over, So Young said quietly. How did we survive? The computer's voice changed, becoming more formal. Accessing files related to Project Silent Guardian. Warning, this information is restricted to security clearance Omega-9 and above. Override, Hyun-woo said. Emergency authority. Override accepted. A new figure appeared in the hologram. A human man in a simple military uniform, standing on the bridge of what looked like an ordinary cargo ship. His name appeared below. Fleet Commander Jin-ho. This is Jin-ho commanding what's left of the human fleet, the recording said. To all attacking forces, you have made a mistake. You came to our home with the intention of destroying us. You brought weapons to kill our children. You planned to erase us from existence. The man's voice was calm, almost friendly, but something in his eyes made Hyun-woo's skin crawl. Correction will now commence. The hologram showed what happened next. Every attacking ship simply stopped. 12,000 vessels, millions of crew members, all frozen in space as if time itself had paused. What did we do to them? So Young whispered. More files opened, showing technical specifications that hurt to look at. Quantum field manipulators, consciousness pattern disruptors, reality anchor points. The words meant nothing to Hyun-woo, but the results were clear. We didn't destroy them, he realized. We did something much worse. The attacking fleets were sent home. But they weren't the same. The Valorian warriors forgot how to fight. The ethereal mind powers stopped working. The Christek couldn't understand their own technology anymore. Entire civilizations were reduced to confused, primitive versions of themselves overnight. Look at this report, So Young said, her voice shaking. The Hive Mind Collective. A species that shared one consciousness across billions of individuals. After the correction, each one became a separate being. They spent decades in chaos, not knowing how to exist as individuals. The Thunderlords of Kelos, Hyun-woo read from another file. Masters of stellar engineering, capable of moving stars and building planets. After the correction, they couldn't even maintain their basic technology. Their empire collapsed within a year. Species after species, all of them reduced from galactic powers to shadows of their former selves. Some recovered over the centuries. Others never did. But all of them remembered what humanity was capable of. We didn't just defend ourselves, So Young said, staring at the data. We rewrote them, changed them at a fundamental level, made them into something harmless. And we did it without firing a shot, Hyun-woo added. Whatever technology we used, it worked on pure thought, on consciousness itself. The computer brought up one final file. This one was different, more recent, only a few decades old. Current status of Silent Guardian Network, active. Monitoring level, galactic. Threat assessment, ongoing. A map appeared showing the entire galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked monitoring stations, sensor networks, and what the files called reality anchor points. They covered everything, every star system, every trade route, every major civilization. It's still running, So Young breathed. The defense system is still active. Of course it is, a new voice said behind them. They turned to see an elderly woman in a simple technician's uniform. She looked familiar, but Hyun-woo couldn't place her. I'm Dr. Miran Cho, she said. I helped design Silent Guardian back when I was young and thought I was saving humanity. Dr. Cho? So Young stared. But you died 50 years ago. The records say a lot of things. Most of them are lies we tell to make ourselves feel better. The old woman walked between the holograms, studying the data with sad eyes. We didn't just build a defense system. We built something that watches every thought, every intention, every possible threat to human space. Is that why the aliens are afraid of us? Hyun-woo asked. They're not afraid of us, Dr. Cho corrected. They're afraid of what we became, what we had to become to survive. She gestured to the monitoring network. Silent Guardian doesn't just defend. It evaluates. Every alien that comes near human space is scanned, analyzed, assessed for threat potential. And if they're judged dangerous, they get corrected, So Young finished. Exactly. But the beautiful part is, they never know it happened. The system changes them just enough to remove the threat, usually by making them fundamentally unable to maintain hostile intentions toward humanity. Hyun-woo felt sick. How many species have we changed without them knowing? Does it matter? They're all alive, aren't they? Happy even. We just helped them become better versions of themselves. And the Devourers? Dr. Cho smiled, and for the first time it was a genuinely happy expression. That's going to be interesting. The system has never encountered anything quite like them. But I suspect we're about to see Silent Guardian's most elegant solution yet. Alarms began blaring throughout the archive chamber. Emergency lights flashed red as the computer announced, "Attention, unknown entities have entered human space. Silent Guardian network activating. Threat assessment in progress." Well, Dr. Cho said cheerfully, looks like we won't have to wait long to see what happens. On the holographic display, they could see the Devourer fleet approaching Harmony. Hundreds of massive bioships, each one capable of consuming entire worlds. But as they watched, something strange began to happen. The ships were slowing down, not stopping, just hesitating as if they were confused about something. The correction has begun, Dr. Cho explained. It'll take a little time to work on creatures that alien, but the result should be quite fascinating. Hyun-woo stared at the display, watching humanity's ultimate defense system go to work on enemies that had terrified the galaxy. He wondered if the Devourers would still be Devourers when it was over. Taeyun wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished installing the atmospheric processor on the hillside. The machine hummed to life, beginning its work of turning the thin air of Harmony into something humans could breathe without masks. It was good work, satisfying work. In 20 years, this barren rock would be a green world full of farms and cities. She was packing her tools when she heard the crash. The sound came from the forest valley below, followed by a plume of black smoke. Taeyun grabbed her emergency kit and ran down the hill. In all her years as a terraforming engineer, she had never seen a ship crash on Harmony. The planet was far from any major trade routes, peaceful and quiet. She found the wreckage in a clearing between the new-growth trees. It wasn't a human ship. The metal was wrong, covered in strange symbols and built in curves that hurt to look at. Two figures sat beside the smoking remains, and they definitely weren't human. One was huge, easily 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin covered in scars. He had 4 arms and looked like he could punch through a mountain. The other was smaller, more human-sized, but her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly. When she looked at Daun, her large black eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. Both aliens looked exhausted and afraid. "Are you injured?" Daun asked, approaching slowly with her medical kit. The big one reached for what looked like a weapon, but the glowing woman put a hand on his arm. "Wait, Kale, she's human." "Human?" The warrior named Kale stared at Daun like she was a ghost. "This far out?" "Are you sure?" I can sense her thoughts. She wants to help. The woman looked at Daun with something like wonder. "I am Zira of the Ethereal Mind Touched. This is Kale, battle champion of the Valorian 3rd Legion." Daun blinked. She recognized those species names from the galactic databases. The Valorians were legendary warriors who could conquer whole star systems. The Ethereals were psychic beings with powers that could read and control minds across vast distances. What were they doing crashing on a backwater colony world? "I'm Diane Park, terraforming engineer. Are either of you hurt?" "Our bodies are fine," Zira said quietly. "But our spirits may be broken forever. We have seen the end of everything." Kyle slammed one of his fists into the ground. "The Devourers came without warning. My entire battle fleet gone in minutes. Ships that could destroy moons reduced to nothing. And they're still coming. Devourers?" Daun had heard the name in old stories, but she thought they were legends. "Creatures from the void beyond our galaxy," Zira explained. "They consume everything. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. Nothing can stop them." Daun looked at the 2 powerful aliens sitting in the dirt looking defeated. "How did you escape?" "We didn't," Kale said bitterly. "We ran like cowards." The Galactic Council called for full evacuation of the Outer Rim. Every species is falling back to their core worlds, hoping to build some kind of defense. "But you're still here," Zira said, confusion in her voice. "Why haven't the humans evacuated?" "This system is directly in the Devourer's path." Daun shrugged. "Nobody told us to leave. Besides, we just got the atmospheric processors working. It would be a shame to abandon the project now." The 2 aliens stared at her like she had grown a second head. You don't understand," Kale said slowly. "The Devourers will be here within days. They'll consume your entire world." "Well, if they do, I guess we'll deal with it then." Daun stood up and shouldered her toolkit. "Come on, you both look hungry. My grandfather makes excellent soup." The colony's main settlement was small, just a few hundred people living in prefabricated buildings while they worked on terraforming. But it was home and the people were friendly. When Daun walked into town with 2 aliens following her, folks just nodded and went back to their business. "Aren't they afraid of us?" Zira whispered. "Why would they be?" Daun asked. "You need help." They found Dong-Hyun sitting on his porch working on a piece of farming equipment. Daeun's grandfather was old even by human standards, but his hands were still steady and his mind sharp. He looked up as they approached. "Granddaughter, you've brought visitors. Welcome, friends." "Grandfather, this is Zira and Kale. Their ship crashed. I thought you might want to hear their news about the galaxy." Dong-Hyun set down his tools and studied the aliens carefully. "Valorian and ethereal, if I'm not mistaken. It's been many years since I've seen your kinds. What brings you to our little world?" Kale found his voice first. "Sir, we bring warning. The Devourers have returned. They're consuming everything in their path. Your people need to evacuate immediately." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "Ah, yes, the Devourers. I remember hearing about them in the old days. Nasty creatures from what I recall. You remember them?" Zira asked. "But that was 500 years ago." "Time moves differently when you get to be my age," Dong-Hyun smiled. "Would you like some tea? And perhaps you could tell me what the Galactic Council plans to do about this situation." As they sat on the porch drinking tea, Kyle and Zira told their story. The sudden appearance of the Devourer fleet. The desperate battles that ended in total defeat. The panicked evacuation of entire sectors. "Every species is contributing their strongest forces," Kale said. "Every species except—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Except the humans," Dong-Hyun finished calmly. "How did you know?" Zira asked. "Because that's what we do. We observe first, act when necessary." The old man sipped his tea, though I suspect the council didn't take that answer well. "They were terrified," Kyle admitted. "Even the Valorian representatives. I've never seen anything like it." "Why?" Daeun asked. "Why are they afraid of us?" Her grandfather was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the valley where the atmospheric processors hummed peacefully. Because they remember the last time someone threatened human space. They remember the Sol incident. What happened during the Sol incident? Darshan pressed. That's classified, dear one. Even from most humans. Zira leaned forward, her eyes glowing brighter. I can sense your surface thoughts, Elder. But deeper down there are walls I cannot pass. Barriers in your mind that I've never encountered before. All humans have them, Donghyun said simply. We've had them for 500 years. Part of the defense system. Defense system? Kale's warrior instincts were clearly alert now. Oh yes, Earth's defensive systems are still fully active. Have been since the Forgotten War ended. We learned some hard lessons back then. Dayun stared at her grandfather. What kind of defense system? Before Donghyun could answer, a young boy came running up the street shouting excitedly. Mr. Park, Mr. Park. Come quick. The long-range sensors picked up something big coming toward the system. The old man stood up slowly. Ah, I suppose they've found us. Kale jumped to his feet, his four hands reaching for weapons that weren't there. The Devourers? Most likely. Donghyun walked to the sensor station at the edge of town, followed by the others. The human technician on duty looked worried. Sir, it's massive, bigger than anything in our databases, and it's heading straight for us. On the screen, they could see a dark shape moving between the stars. It was huge. Easily the size of a small moon with tentacle-like extensions that seemed to reach out into space itself. How long until it arrives? Donghyun asked calmly. 2 days, maybe 3 at most. Kale stared at the display in horror. That's a Devourer command ship. It could consume this entire system in hours. You have to evacuate now. Evacuate where? Donghyun asked reasonably. If they're as dangerous as you say, running won't help much, will it? But you can't just stay here and die. The old man smiled. Who said anything about dying? We'll be fine. The defensive systems will handle it. What defensive systems? Dayun demanded. Grandfather, we don't have any military ships, no weapons platforms, nothing that could fight something like that. Donghyun patted her shoulder gently. My dear granddaughter, there are many things about our people's history that you don't know. Perhaps it's time you learned. He looked up at the stars, where something ancient and hungry was approaching their peaceful world. Besides, he said quietly, it will be interesting to see if the old systems still work. The massive council chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy. 12 different alien species sat around the curved table, their various forms creating an odd mix of shapes and colors. Some looked like giant lizards, others were made of crystal, and a few seemed to be floating energy beings. At the human section, Ambassador Taemin sat quietly, his calm face showing no emotion. Jiwoo stood behind him, holding her datapad with shaking hands. This was her first time at a Galactic Council meeting. She had studied all the alien species for months, learning their customs and languages, but nothing had prepared her for the strange atmosphere in the room. Council leader Vextar rose from his seat. He was a Valorian, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms. His species was known across the galaxy as the strongest warriors. When Valorians spoke, everyone listened. When they went to war, planets fell. Members of the Council, Vextar's deep voice echoed through the chamber. We face the greatest threat our galaxy has ever seen. The Devourers have returned. A cold silence filled the room. Jiwoo felt the temperature drop as every alien in the chamber seemed to freeze. She had read about the Devourers in old reports. They were creatures that ate entire star systems, turning whole civilizations into nothing but empty space. 3 systems have already fallen, Vextar continued. Kaltos Prime, the Meridian colonies, and yesterday the entire Zerian homeworld. Billions of lives gone in hours. Our scouts report the Devourer fleet is massive. Hundreds of bioships, each the size of a moon. A crystal being named Quartzara spoke up, her voice like breaking glass. Our technology cannot stop them. We tried at Kaltos. Our best weapons did nothing. They just kept eating. The Ethereals attempted a psychic assault, added mind speaker Veltron, his floating form glowing dim purple. We could not even touch their thoughts. They are empty, hungry, nothing more. Murmurs filled the chamber as representatives whispered to each other in dozens of languages. Jiwoo watched Taemin, waiting for him to join the discussion. But the human ambassador just sat there looking almost bored. Vextar slammed one of his massive fists on the table. Silence. We must act together. Every species will contribute their strongest fleets. The Valorians will send our battle legions. The Christek Collective will provide their reality benders. The Ethereals will deploy their mind fleets. He looked around the table, making eye contact with each representative. This is not optional. Any species that refuses to help will be considered an enemy of the galaxy. Finally, Vextar's four eyes focused on Taimin. Ambassador, what forces will humanity provide? Taimin looked up slowly, as if he had been thinking about something else entirely. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you talking to me? The Valorian leader's face darkened. I asked what military support humanity will provide against the Devourers. Taimin smiled pleasantly. We will observe the situation. The room went completely quiet. Jiwoo could hear her own heartbeat. She looked around and saw something that confused her. The alien representatives weren't angry. They looked scared. Observe? Vextar's voice cracked slightly. Yes, we'll watch how things develop. Very interesting creatures, these Devourers. We're curious to see what they'll do next. A small, furry alien named Piptar spoke up nervously. But Ambassador Taimin, surely humanity wants to help defend the galaxy. Defend? Taimin tilted his head. From what I understand, you all seem to have the situation under control. Why would we need to get involved? Quartzara's crystal body flickered nervously. Because they're destroying everything? Are they? Taimin asked. How unfortunate for those systems. But I'm sure you'll figure something out. Jiwoo stared at her ambassador in shock. This wasn't the Taimin she knew. He was usually kind and helpful, but now he seemed almost cruel, talking about billions of deaths like they didn't matter. Mind Speaker Veltron floated closer to the human section. Ambassador, perhaps humanity doesn't understand the scale of this threat. The Devourers could consume the entire galaxy, could they? Taimin's smile never changed. That would be quite impressive. Vextar's forearms were shaking now. Are you saying humanity refuses to help? I'm saying we'll observe. If you need us, I'm sure you'll let us know. The council leader's voice dropped to a whisper. You cannot be serious. Even humanity must see that. Must see what? Taimin interrupted, his voice still calm but somehow sharper. That you've all made some bad decisions and now want us to fix them? The alien representatives exchanged looks of pure terror. Jiwoo had never seen anything like it. These were species that conquered planets for fun, that had technologies beyond human understanding, that commanded fleets with millions of ships, but they were acting like frightened children. Perhaps, Taimin continued, you should have thought about this before. What was it you called us 500 years ago? Oh yes, primitive apes who should know their place in the galaxy. The temperature in the room seemed to drop even more. Several aliens were actually shaking now. That was long ago, Veltron said quietly. Things have changed, have they? Taimin stood up slowly. Because it seems like you're still making the same mistakes. Still assuming you can handle everything yourselves. Still thinking you're the strongest species in the galaxy. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each representative. Well, go ahead then. Show us how strong you are. Deal with the Devourers. We'll be watching. Vextar opened his mouth to say something, then closed it. He sat down heavily, his massive frame looking suddenly small. If there's nothing else, Taimin said pleasantly, we'll be returning to our ship. Come along, Jiwoo. As they walked out of the chamber, Jiwoo could hear desperate whispers behind them. Words like Sol Incident and Forgotten War and Never Again floated through the air. In the corridor outside, Jiwoo finally found her voice. Ambassador, what just happened in there? Why were they so afraid of us? Taimin's pleasant smile faded. For the first time, he looked tired. Jiwoo, there are things about our history that most humans don't know. Things that are classified for good reasons. But they're also much stronger than us. They have better ships, better weapons, bigger armies. How can they be scared of humanity? Taimin stopped walking and looked at her seriously. Because they remember what happened the last time someone threatened human space. They remember what we did to protect ourselves. What did we do? Something that made sure no one would ever threaten us again. He started walking again. Come on, we have reports to write. The president will want to know about the Devourer situation. As they walked toward their ship, Jiwoo couldn't shake the image of those powerful aliens sitting in terrified silence. What could humanity have done that was so terrible? It still scared the galaxy 500 years later. And why didn't she know about it?